Good morning, everyone. My name is Jack. I'm one of the road crew team leads here at Big Change. Hopefully, you can all see my screen and hear me all right. If there's any problems, just put it in the chat. Today, we're going to be going over rates and rating tables. Because of the number of attendees for this event, I won't be able to answer any questions individually. I will be answering some of the commonly asked questions that I've had in the past as we go through. And at the end, if we have some time, I'll maybe open the chat and just see if I can answer some questions on the fly. So I hope you enjoyed today's tutorial and find it useful. Today we're going to be covering, oops, sorry, I've gone too far. Hang on. What a rate is, how to create a rate against a job type, how to create a contact rate, so one for a specific contact rather than just a job type overall, how to discount or mark up a rate, so add 10% or remove 20% for a certain contact. Then moving on, we're going to go through rating tables and how they differ from a regular job rate, and then how to create a rating table, how to trigger one, so how to make sure that rate applies to the job, and then we'll go through some example scenarios throughout, just to kind of give an example. So if we just exit this, I'll see if I can share my main screen. So you should be able to see my demonstration site now. One sec. Yep. So what is a rate? It's basically a way of automatically calculating the selling price of the job. So it can either be set to the planned times, in which case it will automatically calculate that as soon as the job is scheduled in, or it can be the actual times, so the times between the engineer hitting start work and hitting end work, in which case obviously it won't trigger until the job has been completed. But it is only the selling price. It's what you're going to charge the customer for this job, not the cost price of the job or what you'll be charging, or what the cost would be to you. So how do we set up a rate? So first we'll set one up against a job type. So in the main site, you go to My Account at the top right and Administration. A lot of what we're going to look at today is in the admin, so you will need to be an admin for most of it. Into Schedule, and then into Job Types. So I believe I've created one already. If I can spell it right. Here we go. Yeah, so this is just a really basic job type I just created. Nothing. All I've done is put a name in really, and nothing else. So once you clicked on the job type, you click Edit, and go to the Financial, and you'll automatically be in this Rates section. So this is where you're going to set up the majority of your rates. So if we click Add at the bottom, we get all these options. So I'll go through each one just before we start creating anything. So the top option, Override Contact Set Rates, we'll go through that in a bit more detail later once we have some contact rates in, but it basically chooses what takes priority, the job type or the contact. The period, so when is this rate actually going to apply? So we can say Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and put a time in. If we leave it blank, it will do it no matter what. So say if we didn't put any days in here and no times, then it doesn't matter what time the job will be, it will automatically just use this rate. Or say if I just chose Monday to Friday and didn't put any times in, then it would just do all day on those days. But just for example, we'll just put 8 till, I don't know, 6 o'clock, say, Monday to Friday. So the fixed price, that's just going to come through regardless of whatever variables you have. So it doesn't matter how long the job's going to take, when it starts, how far away it is. It's always going to bring through a fixed price, and then add that to the other rates you've got in this section. The traveling hourly rate is, how long it takes you to drive to the location. So depending on, well, at the bottom we've got the durations used, planned or actual. If we're doing planned, then it will work out how far it is to, how long it's going to take to get to that job. Similar to how the chevrons work on the schedule, that's how long it will determine. So it'll either be from the engineer's start location for that day or the previous job location. The rate per mile is obviously how much you're going to charge per mile the engineer has to drive. So again, it will use that calculated driving distance. Or if you're going to do the actual times, it would be how far is actually driven on the map to get to that job between him hitting start driving and start the job. This option driving from a fixed location. So if you have that set to no, as I said, this is mainly just for when you're using planned. So if no, it will just calculate it from the previous job location or from his start point of the day, if it's the first job of the day. But if we said a contact, you could have this set to like your depot, for instance. If I put Big Change in here, this is just searching for such in the CRM for contacts. So I could say every time we calculate this rate per mile or this hourly rate, we always want to just work it out from Big Change, which is good if you want to charge your customers the same each time. So even if the previous job, the engineer might have been over the road, so it really doesn't have to go far, but we're still going to charge that customer the same amount just to keep it consistent. So the rounding, the driving round time rounding, so you can say round it up or down, and in here you just put the nearest minutes. So we could say like 15 minutes. So if it comes through that he spent 52 minutes driving, then it'll round that up to an hour. Well, that's with if we had it rounded up. And if it was rounded down, it would round it down to 45 minutes. You can leave this blank and it will use exact times, but the majority of examples I've seen in the past, people usually use like 15 minutes, 30 minutes, something along those lines. Since we're not actually going to be using the driving for this first bit, we'll leave this blank. And the driving multiply, it's just an extra little option. So it's just a number that you can multiply that final cost, that final selling price by whenever it comes through. So sorry about that. So say if you always wanted to charge the customer from your depot, but you always want to charge them there and back, you would just put a multiplier of 2 in here, and so on. So the working hourly rate, this is what we'll put in first, just to do some tests. So this is your hourly rate for the first hour, the hourly rate after the first hour, and the hourly rate after the planned duration. Now, if you're just going to charge them the same amount no matter what, it's always going to be, let's say £40 an hour. It doesn't matter how long the job takes. You're always going to charge them £40, but you just put 40 in all those boxes. But say if it was planned for an hour and the job took 2 hours, then you could say, right, for the second hour, we're going to charge more because it wasn't initially meant to take that long. And then you could put like 80 in here or something like that. But we'll show that as an example shortly afterwards. And similarly for the planned duration of this job type is 60 minutes. That's just the default when you create any job type, but I'm assuming you probably have your own if you've already set up these job types. So that's just the time after that planned duration. So say if you had it set for 90 minutes, as soon as that 90 minutes is passed, it'll then start using this different hourly rate, whatever you have in here. But let's say we're going to round it up to 15 minutes every time. Multiply by number of resources. So that's applicable to when there's assistants on the job. So say if you've got this job with 2 assistants on it, they'll multiply that rate by 3. So that's especially useful if you're using costs already. So you've got your engineers hourly wage and everything like that set in there, so you know what the cost is going to be. You want it to reflect that in terms of what you're going to charge the customer. Show working rate even if the amount is 0. This is an extra little option. To be honest, with the hourly rates, you're probably not going to have that because you're never going to have a job that's 0 minutes long. But say if you're already at the site already, say if you're doing a job previously, there would be no driving hourly rate because you're already there, in which case that would be 0. And it's just basically saying, do you want to still show that financial line, even if the cost of the total is 0, or just remove it entirely because it's not relevant? So we'll leave that as no, that's the default. And the durations used, planned or actual. Like I said, we'll leave this as planned for the first example. But if it's unplanned, these hourly rates will just be from the planned job duration. So when I first schedule it in, it'd be 60 minutes. If we were to set this to actual, it would use the exact times between the engineer hitting start job and the engineer hitting complete job. But we'll just leave this as planned for the time being. I'll go back and change it. And the VAT code, we've only got a couple set in here, but they'll all be set in your financials. I think T1 is 20%, so we'll just put that in. That's just a way of basically calculating the VAT automatically for this financial line once it appears. So we've got this rate. Weekdays, 8 till 6, £40 an hour all the time in those hours, round up to 15 minutes. So let's just press OK on that. So we've got that saved against this job type. So we're just going to save this job type now. And now if I schedule a job, so I go back to the schedule. And if I create a new job, I believe I've got a test. There we go. Test contact. We're going to against this contact, this job type. We'll put it in for today. So let's say 10:30 today. So it's really basic. We haven't even got any worksheets or anything set up on this job type just yet. So we just created it. If we save this now, it'll be in the schedule. Here we go. So if I click on it and click view now, and then go to the financial section, you can see we've got this rate that's coming through. So at the moment, it's just on £40 because that's the hourly rate, and the duration is 60 minutes. And it's using that planned duration for the time being. If we were going to change this, because we have it set to round up every 15 minutes, say if we just added an extra 1 minute to this, 61 minutes, in theory, that should round up now to 75 minutes. So if we just save that, open it back up again, go into the financials, and just recalculate. There we go. It's changed it to 50. So it's added an extra £10 on for the extra 15 minutes we're going to charge for. Now, the reason I hit this recalculate button is because the rate only automatically calculates when you actually schedule a job in for the planned duration, or when, if you're not an actual, when you complete the job. Because in reality, a job can't be completed twice, so they're going to trigger it once. But if you've changed the rate, so you want to go back and update that on old jobs or ones you've got in the system already, or just if you're doing some testing like we are now, you can just hit this recalculate button. If I was to change this to like anything like 30 and ask it to recalculate, it would just replace it again. It'll start using that rate again. So let's just do some other examples. Let's just we'll save this actually with that new rate. We can use this job. I'm not going to complete it just yet. And then just keep recalculating just to show some examples. So if we go back into it, so my account, administration, schedule, job types, session. I'll just copy paste this. Click edit, go to financials, and we'll add something. So let's say if we put a fixed price of, let's say, £50 on this now. And let's say we're going to say after the first hour, we're actually going to charge double. So it'll do that £40 for the first hour. Then for the next 15 minutes, because it's going to round up to 75 minutes, it should do £8 an hour. So it should be £20. So if my math is right, it should be 40 plus the 20 from this, the 15 minutes, 60 plus the 50, giving us 110, because that's going to come through no matter what. So we save that. Go back to our job, back to the schedule, click view, go to financial, recalculate. There we go, 110. So it's only £40 for the first hour, the £20 from the 15 minutes of the second hourly rate, and then added the 50 for the fixed price. Now, let's close this. Let's just do some examples with the driver duration as well before we get into the actual time. So go to schedule again, job types. As I go through, I'm probably going to repeat myself, just keep saying the same where I'm going, just in case anybody misses it. So back to the financial, click on it, click edit. So let's say we're going to do an hourly rate of, let's just say £10. And then let's also just do, I won't be able to do this one in my head, but let's just say we've got a rate per mile of £2. And it's going to do, let's try and fix location. Yep, let's say from Big Changes head office. So big change in there. I believe this test contact as well is somewhere in Leeds. So it should only be a couple of miles or so. Just save that. And you can see as well when you're in here, it has a summary. So when you have multiple rates, you might have this weekday one, you might have one for Saturday, Sunday. So you can see a summary of all of them here. So it's good to be able to check and compare them in this section. So let's save that. And what it'll actually do is it'll leave that first rate alone, the one from the actual job duration. But it'll create a second financial line for the travel. So I go to here and click recalculate. And here, so it's actually really close. It's only 1.9 miles. So it's it won't have taken, the hourly rate won't really taken much effect, to be honest, there, because it's taken it'll probably just it'll be a couple of minutes, and then the £2 per mile, and it's basically calculated that as £6.23, and that one has remained the same. Obviously, if you haven't changed anything with the hourly rates, but always put them as separate so you can see, and I'll always put the distance in the travel line item. There's no way to edit this one, unfortunately. What comes through, it'll always say travel 1.9 miles. Of course, you can change it however you want, put anything you want in there afterwards, or even amend the prices if you wanted to before you actually create that financial doc and create the invoice for the customer. But if we wanted to change what's said here, actually, because at the moment all it's doing is putting the job type, rates live session, and then the contact name, rate session contact. So let's just save this and we'll go back. I'll show you how to actually amend what comes in there. Obviously, you could type in whatever you want each time, maybe remove that, but you can use keywords similar to a template and change that there. So we go, it's actually, rather than the financial section, it's in the template section. So you'll see here, this line here, financial description. Currently it's using rates live session, which is the job type name. And then it's putting Tesco here as a placeholder, but that's the keyword for contact name. So if I wanted to, I could put a keyword for job reference in, another one for, let's just plan job duration. So basically anything that's used to calculate that rate is a keyword in here. So if you wanted to, you can automatically show the customer what values are being used to actually create that rate that they're showing on the document. So we save this, go back to our job, click view, financial, recalculate again, and you'll hear now it's put the plan duration, which was 61 minutes, 1 hour, 1 minute, and then also the job reference, which is this one here. So it's automatically created as soon as I create the job. Just a good way of just editing what comes through in here, and then obviously you can type whatever you want in it once it's actually come through. So let's go on to actual. So let's go back into administration, schedule, job types. Click edit, go to financial, edit the rate, and we'll go to actual. So when it's on actual, until the job is completed, it actually works the same way. So actually use the plan duration still. But as soon as the job is completed, then it will start to use, then instead, once you recalculate, well, it'll automatically recalculate as soon as the job is completed. It'll use the actual times the engineers put in. So if they start it and complete it within 45 minutes, it will use that time. So just for an example, I'm not going to do it on a tablet, but you can just do it manually, which I'll show you in a sec. So we've got it on actual now. Click OK. Click save. So we go back to this job. We're going to complete the job now. For those of you who don't know, I'm not sure if all of you will be aware of this, but in the activity section of every job, you can see all the activity times. You can see that I've created the job, scheduled it in, and if it was a completed job, you would have started, well, on the way, when they've hit on the way, started and completed. And if you have the ability to do so, you can edit these times. So, or you can add them in manually, as we're going to do now, rather than having to do it on a tablet. So I'll say that it was scheduled for 10:30. We'll say we started at exactly 10:30, bang on the dot. So activity started, save that, save the job. You can see it's actually now said on the schedule that it has been started, just as if it was an engineer filling it out. Go back to activity, and we'll say we completed it. Let's say we completed it in 45 minutes. Well, let's say just under that, just so it rounds it. So it's actually only took, so we completed it at 11:10. Activity completed, comment completed. That's just because we only have one comment for this, but obviously you might have different completion comments depending on the job type. Click save, and now if I save it again, our job has now been completed. And if you go to financial, the price has now been changed. It was 110, and now it's changed to 80. So what it'll be doing is it'll be in a fixed price of 50, and then how long was our job? So it was 40 minutes, rounded up to 45 minutes at £40 an hour is £30. So yeah, it's done that 50 plus 30 to get 80. And this has remained the same with the distance because I haven't actually put in the start driving or anything because I'm not doing it on the tablet. You can't actually test this in that way because there's no option to put start driving in when you're actually adding an activity via the website. It's already started, suspended, completed, or completed with issues. But if we were to actually do it on the tablet, hit start driving, drive a certain distance on the map, and then hit start job, it would use those times instead. So that's just a quick example of a job type rate. Obviously, you can test it and create it however you want. But how would you create it against a contact instead? So say if you have a certain contact that you might have the generic job type rate, but a certain contact might have different prices or maybe a discount or something along those lines. So say if we go to this contact, it's already loaded up. So in the CRM, you search for the contact, click edit, and it's similar to actually on the job type. You go to the financial and you go to rates. So we'll go through this bottom section in a second, but for the first bit, we're going to talk about contact rates. So if we click add rate at the bottom, it's really similar to a job type rate. In fact, it's identical, except for the top option. You can select the job type. And that basically means that you're going to apply this for certain job types and you only override certain ones. Or do you want to just do it for all? And you set up the exact same way. So you might want to say, right, this customer, we charge double. Like we charge £80, then we charge £160 an hour after the first hour, and so on. In fact, yeah, let's just do a quick test. So we'll do basically identical with the rates, but we'll just say that it's double. And we'll do double the fixed price as well. I believe that's what we had before. So I added that in, and it shows it, again, in a similar way to do on the job type. So if we save this contact now, go back to our job, and that should have overridden, because this contact now has a rate, it should have overridden the job type rate. So we go to financial. We'll have to recalculate. There we go. So it's also removed the travel line item, because we didn't put anything in on the contact rates in terms of the travel, but it has doubled that price, using 160 instead, and it's using that contact one. In order to choose whether or not it overrides, that's actually on the job type rate. So if I go back into the admin, schedule job types, find this job type again, click edit, go to financial, and that's that tick box I talked about first thing. So this option here, override contact set rate. So currently set to no. So that's why that rate on the contact is applying rather than this one. And that's mainly because the reason it's on here is because you might have all these different rates set up, but you just want this one contact to have like a 10% discount. If this was not on this section, then you would then have to basically say on the job type, on the contact, you set up a rate for every single job type, which would be quite extensive. Whereas with it being on just, so if you have like a really important job type that you know you will always charge for, it doesn't matter if the customer has a contact rate or anything like that, you're not going to charge them any different. You can say in this section, yeah, override contact set rates. This is like an emergency job. It needs to be charged this amount. It's really important. So if we just save that again and save it, go back to our job and recalculate, and I should go back to using that job type rate. Financial, recalculate, and yep, it's gone back to 18. It's brought through that travel line again. So yeah, I'm going to close this without saving. So if we go back to our CRM now and talk about discounts, because for that example, we just charge double for everything. So if you've got something simple like that, rather than having to set up a brand new rate, and because you'll have to put in your times and everything, go to financial, then rates, specific job types, things like that. What you can do is this section, the discounts and markups. And this is actually quite a new feature. So at the bottom, if I click add, what we can do is, so you have a similar thing at the top, you say which job type it applies to and what time of day and what days of the week. But in here, rather than having certain prices, you can just say we want to discount it or mark it up for that certain thing. So if you want to discount, you put a minus number. And if you want to mark up, you put a positive number. So we might say that we just want to give them 50% off the fixed price. So that should turn our 50 on the fixed price into 25. So it should remove 25. And we don't want to mess with anything else, but in this example, but it'd do the same thing. You could say that you actually want to charge this customer more for their first hour, or more for every hour. We charge them 20% more, something along those lines. So it's just a quick way of applying that to our job type. So we'll go save that. So we now have that. We'll delete this one, just so it doesn't mess with anything, and then we'll go back and just set that job type rate to not be priority. So we go back to admin, schedule, job types, click on it and click edit, and then go to financial, click edit, and we'll say no, it's not overridden by contact set rates. This will actually matter, to be honest, against the discounts. Discounts will always apply, regardless if you've got them set up. But just to be sure, we're just going to get rid of that and save it. So if we go back to the schedule now, back to this job, So it was, I think it should now go back to the £80 and then remove 25 as it's done. So now we've just got the fixed price of basically £25, and then we've got that hourly rate at 45 minutes. So £30 because it's £40 an hour. So it's a really nifty feature. Before, you could only really do markups and discounts on like stock items, predefined invoicing items, things like that. If you wanted to do something similar to this, you'd have to do what we did in our first example and just set up a brand new rate on the contact. But now that we have this discount and margin, we can just say for specific things on the rate, we want to charge them more or less. So that's kind of job rates and contact rates. The best way to really learn it is to just do some practices with what examples you have and things like that, and specific scenarios. But as I said, it's in my account, administration, schedule, job types, and against the job type. And you can always, just to do some tests, you can do it on plan duration at first, just to see how it works. So now, moving on to rating tables. Now, the difference between rating tables and job rates is basically that a job rate only really depends on one variable. You'll have a pound per mile or a pound per hour. Anyway, that's pretty much it, and you just add the two numbers together. Whereas a rating table is two variables. So you could say that a job is £40 an hour if it's less than 10 miles away from you, or that's how far they have to go. But it's £80 an hour if it's more than 10 miles. So you have two different values that affect what rate comes through. And there's loads of different things you can choose for those two variables. That's just one example, but we'll go through how to set it up. So again, it's in the admin, and this time it's in financial, and then into schedule of rates. So I haven't created one yet, so we'll go to add one. Let's call it rate session table. The group, it doesn't really matter. This is just for when you're actually filtering in here, if you want to filter by certain rating tables. Currency is pound, and invoice description. So this is the same as what we had before on the job type rate. You can change what comes through. So just to make it obvious, I'm just going to put from rating table. So we can see, because there'll still be that job type rate on the job when we're testing this. So I want to see what comes from the job type rate and what comes from the rating table. So we've got all these options. The good thing about doing it in the rating table as well is that you can add things like nominal code, department codes. You can put all these in. The tax code as before. Almost everything in the job type rate and the contact rate can be set up as a rating table. So if you want to rely solely on these, you can do. They're just a bit more complicated, but that's because you can have all these different options. So what are our two variables, the row type and the column type? So you might have, let's just do that example I was speaking about a second ago. So we'll have job actual duration for one. So that's this row. And then column type, we said planned distance, didn't we? So job planned driver distance in miles. And what you've got down here is basically a table. So it's added that row and that column header. And these are going to be your boundaries. So I said 10 miles, didn't I? So 10 miles. So basically what that's doing is if this value is less than 10, it's going to use this column. And if the value is more than 10, it's going to use this column. And this is where we're going to put our rates in. Job actual duration minutes. Let's just put this as 60. So we could, to even more so than that, we could say that if it's less than 10 miles and less than 60 minutes long, that's how long the job takes, we're going to charge them. We'll start with fixed prices again before I go into actual like hourly rates. So we'll just do a fixed price of, we're going to charge them £50. If it's more than 10 miles, we're going to charge them double. You say, right, it's £100 and takes less than 60 minutes. If it's less than 10 miles but takes more than 60 minutes, we could say we're going to charge them £75. And again, we'll just do double. So if it's more than 10 miles and takes more than 60 minutes, we're going to charge them 150. But you can add as many rows or columns as you want in there. You could say, you could have another set for more than 20 miles, another set for more than 30 miles, or hourly rates, things like that. But just to keep it simple, we're going to just do, so you just use these plus signs here to add or remove these columns or rows. So the thing to remember is basically this is your boundary. If the duration is bang on 10, it will basically, so this is like a more than or equal to. So if it's bang on 10, it will do this column right here. Or if the job actual duration is bang on 60, it will use this bottom row. So it'll always do one more, like the next row down or the next column across. So let's just save this for the time being. Now, how do we actually put that on a job? We don't assign it to the job type or the contact. What we have to do is actually trigger it from a worksheet question. So those of you that have set up the worksheets and done conditional branching before, you'll have seen some of this, but I'll go through it a bit. So essentially, you're going to have a question on the job. It could be for the engineer or it could be for the office to fill out before it's scheduled in. Something that's going to trigger that rating table to appear. You can even set it so that it doesn't depend on anything, so that it triggers no matter what. Obviously, because you might not want the engineer to have the say so whether or not the rating table triggers, but we'll go through that. So we'd have to set up a worksheet. So we go to schedule and then worksheets. We'll create a new one. So we'll say rate session worksheet. We'll leave the completion times for the time being because it's just a test. We'll save that. So if I search for session again. So a brand new worksheet, brand new set of questions we're going to apply to this job. So we're going to add a question. We'll keep it simple. We'll say, do you want to apply? Right. Yes or no. And we'll save that. So we've got this job. Yes or no. It is a question, sorry. So if we click edit, we can add a branch. So some of you may have seen this before where you say if the answer is equal to yes, go to a certain question. If it's equal to no, go to another question, so the engineers don't have to answer irrelevant questions. But what we can do is to say if the answer is equal to yes, in this option here, instead of all this, right at the bottom, we've got apply rating. And then it'll bring through a drop down of everything you've got here. But you can also search for it. So I can say apply rating, and this will be a drop down of all your rating tables. Choose the table I just set up and save that. So now if the engineer answers yes on that question on the job, that's what's going to say, right, trigger that rating table. And then it'll use the relevant variables, your plan distance, your actual duration, things like that. Like I said, you might not want it to be dependent on what an engineer says or what a back office person selects. You might just want to say, right, no matter what, we're going to apply this rating table. And that's the case. What you can do is say, so let's add another one, for example. Rather than saying equal to, there's an option here for other answers. So currently, if we set it here, what this branch is doing is saying, if it's equal to yes, apply the rating table. If other answers, so anything other than yes, which in this case is only no, then do something else. So you might say, apply a different rating table. So that's mainly for if you've got a long list of answers and you really want to put a branch in for one. But if we were to put other answers and remove this, what I essentially say now is if it's any other answer except for, well, nothing, which is everything, then apply that conditional branch. So if we just had it set to other answers and then did apply rating, it doesn't matter what the engineer will put in. As long as they put something on that question, then it would trigger. So you want to put this on any mandatory question, preferably one that has no other branches that's on that worksheet. So you could, and the engineer will be completely unaware of this. So it doesn't really matter what question you put it on, as long as you know it's a question that they have to answer in order to complete the job. But we'll leave it just to show what I had a second ago. We'll leave it as yes, just so I can show how it triggers with yes and no, and we'll change it in a sec. So we'll save this, and we'll put this as the default worksheet on that job type we had a second ago. So we click edit. And default worksheets. We have a lot in the demo site of test ones, so it might just take a second to load up. There you go. Rate session worksheet. That's one we just added that branch to. And let's create a new job. It's a new job. When did this one finish? Just after 11. So we'll say we'll start this one at 11:30. You see it's brought through the worksheet straight away, or we could actually just click on it and put the worksheet in manually. But because I assigned it as the default one, it's brought through that as soon as I click the job type. Click on this. When did I say? 11:30. And put it for myself. So we've got this job in the system now. So first of all, And for those of you unaware, you can see all the engineer's worksheet answers on the job in this worksheets tab. So this is the only question we've got. Do you want to apply the rate? Yes or no? We'll hit no the first time to show that it doesn't trigger. And then we'll complete it as an engineer would do. So save it. We can add a started activity. Again, let's just say 11:30. Started. And they completed it. I don't know, let's just 55 minutes for the time being. So it's less than 60, then we can amend that. So the 12:25 completed. Save that. So we've got this job in the system now. It'll probably apply that rate we had before. So yeah, it's got our ones from the job type rate, the travel, and the one before, but it hasn't applied this extra line for the rating table. And that's because we haven't triggered it yet. So if we go to the worksheet and hit yes on this, and then save the job, click on it and view it again, go to financial and recalculate. See, now it's brought through this extra one from the rating table. And it said we know that because it's got this extra text I put in from the rating table. And it said £50. So we had a fixed price, and I believe that was the lowest. So this job, oh yeah, it's still 2 miles away, so it's less than 10 miles. And it's fixed price of £50 because it takes less than 60 minutes. If we were going to go into the activity and change when, let's just say this, change when they edited it to over 60 minutes. So let's just put they actually finished at 12:35 and save this. And then recalculate. So now it's saying £75 because that's what we had in our table. So we go back to our, let's just save this job. So my account, administration, financial, schedule of rates. Where's it gone? Schedule of rates. Click edit. You'll see it's using 75 because it's less than 10 miles, but it's more than 60 minutes. That's how long it took. So we use £75. So that's kind of a brief summary of how the rating tables work. But what if you don't want a fixed price? You want an hourly rate like we had before. That's what this option here is here. So multiply price by. So you could do multiply the price by the job actual duration in minutes. What it's going to do then, currently, if we had that, it would do £75 multiplied by the job actual duration, which was 65 minutes, I believe. So we could just use that. I mean, why not? We'll just say it's going to be quite a hefty number. But if we go back into the schedule, recalculate that now. You see it's multiplied the two together, 75 minus 6, multiplied by 65. So because that's in minutes, so what if you want to add essentially an hourly rate? Go back to financial, schedule the rates. So the only downside really to the rating table is you can't round because it's doing it in minutes. So this, if you add the multiply option, this would, let's have a look at the chat. I'll answer a quick few questions I can see. How many columns rows can you have in the rating table? You can have as many as you want. I'm not sure what the actual limit is, but if I click in here, I can keep adding more and more and more. And then you have this one at the bottom. I've never actually reached the limit, so I'm not entirely sure, but it's quite substantial. You know, you can have like 100 different boxes in here. So this would be like a minutely rate, essentially. So if we were charging £60 per hour, you put a 1 in here because we're multiplying that number by the minutes. So these are basically going to be, yeah, like I said, like essentially minutely rates. So we'll put 1, 2, let's say £1, 1.5, and 3. So we'll keep the same sort of system in. And then it'll be a much smaller number, much more realistic. But it does use the exact times. There's no rounding in this. So they'll always use the exact. You can also, if you want to, multiply by both. So you can multiply this number by both the actual duration that comes through and the planned distance, which I believe was 1.9 for this. But we'll just do that as is. So what was that saying? So it was 65 minutes, and it's more than 65 minutes. So it was 1.5 times 65. It should be about 90 something. So we click on this now, click financial and recalculate. It's £97.50 coming from that rating table. So you see there's various different options you can use. If I go back into our rating table now, so you could have any of these variables can be, anything that's in this list here. So you've got plenty of different options. You could even do, as well as all the ones we had before, like the times and the completion times, you could have job category, in which case it just puts that value right on the line, because obviously you can't be between two job categories. And you could say for certain job categories, you want to charge this amount. So you could almost put all your rates kind of in one rating table, really, and just make sure it's triggered on every single job type if you want to do it in that way. But the other thing I want to talk about, it's quite important that I feel is a common question, is this option at the bottom, worksheet answer. So you can essentially, as well as all these options here, you can almost create your own variable that you want in here by using a worksheet answer. Then you can have the worksheet ask any question you like, and as long as there's an answer to that, then it will use that value. So, for example, you might go to a site and you might pick up some tonnage of a certain item. Like you might pick up waste. So you might say how many tons of waste is meant to be picked up at this job, or maybe you want the engineer to fill it out, and you'll say during the job how many tons they'll pick up. So you want it to depend on a worksheet answer. Then you'll charge the customer just, I don't know, £5 per ton or something along those lines. If that's the case, we're going to do worksheet answer for one of these. We'll put this one back to job actual duration and just get rid of some of these. So worksheet answer, let's say a similar thing to that planned rate. So we want to say, first of all, we want to say there's a column description, because it's going to ask us what actually is this column. So all it knows at the moment is it's a worksheet answer. So we'll say tonnage. You can see it's changed that here. The answers unit. So this is similar to setting up the actual worksheet question. It's going to be a number. So put it here. If we were going to change that to text, it would ask us options like, is it less than or equal to, or for a day or time, then you could see, we'll change this to a time instead, and you have between Wednesday at 12, and the next one could be Thursday 12 and something on those lines. But we'll leave it on number just for this example. We'll say, so we're going to do multiply price by tonnage, because that's what we're going to be actually calculating. And we're going to say, let's remove these numbers for the time being. We're going to say we're going to charge, let's just keep it simple numbers. If it's less than 10 tons, we're going to charge them £10 for every ton. So we're going to do this number multiplied by 10 multiplied by this number, because that's what we have up here. And if it's more than 10 tons, we're going to charge them £20 per ton. Now, again, we can do this with, we can have extra variables in here. But say if you don't care about the job actual duration, you don't care about really any other variable, you just want to use this worksheet answer and multiply whatever comes through in there by 10. What you can do is set something here. Let's just use job actual duration. Put any number you want in there. It doesn't actually matter. As long as you just put the same number in this row as this row. So essentially what it's doing now is it's saying, if the job takes less than 60 minutes, charge them £10 per ton if it's less than 10 tons. If the job is more than 60 minutes, still charge them £10 per ton. So that's every time possible, essentially. So we don't care about the actual duration. We just care about multiplying this number that comes through as the tonnage by £10 or £20, depending on what number you put in. So we'll save that. Then if we go to, so now we've got that worksheet set up, we actually need to create the question, to put the tonnage in. So if we go back to our worksheet we had, go to session, rate session worksheet, click edit. Let's remove this one. It's not relevant anymore. We're going to add a question. Let's run that. How many tons are there? It's going to be a whole number. I'm going to say it's mandatory, because we want this rating table to trigger every time. You have to put something into that job. And we're going to save this question. How many tons are there? Click edit. Add that conditional branch. So if equal to other answers, so if it's any answer other than nothing, and because they have to put something in, the answer is mandatory, this will always trigger. Apply the rating table. We'll find our rating table again, rate session table. But the thing that's different this time is because we have that worksheet answer set as one of either the row or the columns. It's going to ask us what question does that actually apply to. Now, this is actually the question we're on currently, but you could have the rating table trigger from one worksheet, but it might depend on another worksheet or another worksheet answer. So all we have to do in this scenario is just choose our worksheet we're on. Yeah, it might just take a bit of time to load considering how many test worksheets we have on this site. Let's try that again. Let's give it a sec. Select questions to link. I think I've just been impatient and clicking too many times. So go down to, it's called a rate session. Here we go, rate session worksheet. So that's this worksheet right here. You can just about see that, the worksheet name right there. Worksheet question, it's going to be how many tons are there? That's the only question on this worksheet. Otherwise, you'd have a full list of which question you want. And we'll click OK. So it tells you here as well what worksheet question you have selected, but it's just the one we're on. Save that. Save that. Go back to our job. Let's create a brand new one for this example. So again, find this contact, this job type, schedule it in for, let's say, 1 o'clock. Save it. So this job here, we're going to complete the job as if we were the engineer. So we're going to say, start the job, keep it simple again, bang on 3, started. Then, as if I was the engineer, go to the worksheet, fill out how many tons are there. There are 8 tons they're picking up. And then we complete the job. So save that, add that completed activity. Now, because we have the same price before or after 60 minutes, doesn't matter when we complete it. So we'll just say finished at 2. Completed. And then just like before, if we go back into it, go into financial, you can see we've got these 2 rates from the job type, but we have this one from the rating table. So it's done it's £10 per ton, and we've got that £80 because we put 8 in there. If we were to go in and edit this, let's change this to 7, we'll be able to see, if we just save it, we'll be able to see in that financial, recalculate, they changed it to 70. And because we had it set so that if it's over 10, it charged double, charged £20 per ton. If we were to change this to 12, for instance, that should be 240 instead. So we're doing £20 per ton, £20 per 12 times 12. Financial and recalculate again. There we go, 240. So that's a way of basically using a worksheet question instead. So you could have maybe either, like we've done it, we could have had a scenario where you're the engineer filling out this question on the job, or you might want to have a worksheet set that's got to be completed before the job is created. So the back office might have to fill out this question before the job goes out. So you can kind of have anything you want in here as long as it's something that you can put in as an answer. Could be a list answer, could be a number, basically anything you want. You could even have a rating table that depends on 2 worksheet questions for both the column and the row. The final thing I want to talk about, because I'm running over a bit before I look at the chat for any questions that we put on there, is predefined invoice and items. So go to financial, go to our schedule of rates, back to session, click on this and click edit. We have this option that I kind of glossed over before, use predefined invoice and items. If I tick this, you'll see it removes all my prices. But what these essentially become instead are search bars. So I'm assuming there's probably one called test. There's plenty here. So these are all our predefined invoice and items. So these, if I back out of this is in financial predefined invoice and items. So these have all been set up with cost prices and selling prices, names, things like that. So let's just use this this collect sewage one. Why not? Actually, no, use this one with a cost price. Let's do this repair suspension one. So schedule the rates. Back to our session. We're going to use predefined invoice and items. And here we go. We've got various different options. So you could put different predefined invoicing items in all of them, but for this example, we're just going to do the same in all of them just to show it coming through. And basically it works in the same way. So it's what it's going to do is it's going to do that £42 selling price, multiply it by the tonnage. So it's the same as putting in £42. The benefit is that you get the cost price of the predefined invoicing item. So this one had a cost against it. So it'll multiply that as well. So just put the same in all of them. Okay. And now we'll go back to our job. Click view, financial, recalculate. So it's taken that that price, multiplied it by the 12, and then it's also taken the cost price, which is against the predefined invoicing item, and then done the rest the same way. It will still bring through the actual templated words from the rating table rather than the description of the predefined invoicing item, but it's a good way of potentially getting a cost that comes through. So you might just have all your rates, both cost and the selling price, just like hourly rates, for instance, just well, I guess it'd be minutely rates if you're going to use a rating table, set up as in your predefined invoicing items, and just apply this by the rate. Whereas if you're doing it on a job type rate as before, you wouldn't be able to put a cost through. I think I've run over a bit, but I think that's pretty much it. I'll go through the chat now if anybody has any questions, if anybody wants to put them in now. And just give me 1 sec, I'll get the chat up. I feel like I've covered a lot of the ones that were sent in beforehand, but we'll go through. So how many columns, rows can you have? I went through that. You can basically, as far as I can gather, there seems to be as many as you like, or at least more than you'll ever need. So what if the person assisting them is on a different rate? I'm assuming by that they mean the actual hourly rate that is costing you, like their actual wage, in which case it will just put them both as the cost on that job. So if someone's getting paid £20 an hour and their assistant's getting paid £15 an hour, then the selling price will still multiply by 2 because it just knows there's 2 people on this job. But the cost price that comes through from the hourly rate will be the actual, the combined amount for each engineer. So it'll be the correct one. Can the rate be created depending on the distance you're in from a resource's home address? Yeah, that's actually something that I forgot to mention. So before, when I had the distance from our head office, a big change, you can put any contact you want in there. So if I go to my account, administration, schedule, back to our job type, as long as you have all your engineers' home addresses put in as contacts in CRM, you can select that in that section. So say if I just want to put in, I don't know if I have an old address in here. No, but say if I wanted to put my home address in there, I just put like, I don't know, Jack Tyson home in the group homes or something. You'd set up a group for that. Once that contact's in the system, go into administration, schedule, job types, search for this one. And then when you're setting your rate, you can say, well, either, well, it depends. If you're in depot, obviously this will be applicable to all resources. So you have big change limited in here. But obviously, if you're doing it per resource, they're not all going to start from the same home address. So what you want from that is driving fixed location, no. Then what it'll do is it will use either the previous job location or their starting point for the day. And that starting point for the day is where you want to set up their home address. So slightly separate section, basically in resources, add and edit. Jack Tyson. Click on them and click edit. So in my working hours, it'll ask me start location every day. So the moment I'm set to start from Big Change Limited. But if I added my home address in the system, I could say that every day I'm actually starting from my home address. In which case, the rate, unless it's been told otherwise, we'll just use that for the first job of the day. And then for subsequent jobs, we'll use the previous job location. If we charge different amounts for each engineer on jobs, like a senior engineer, how we separate for both on a job type? What you'd have to have, if you're going to have that, so as in like if you send one person for one job, one person for another, you can charge the customer different amounts, I assume, depending on whether or not they're experienced or something like that, senior engineer or not. You'd have to have that as 2 different job types. There wouldn't be a way to have both on the same engineer because you'd have basically both set for the same time, and then both would trigger. So you could do it. You could, another example, have both rates set for the exact same times on the job type, and then just delete the one that comes through because both of them will show on the job. But that's a manual process. I think it's probably best to just have separate job types if you're going to do that. So you might have like, for my example, you might have like rate session dash senior or something like that. Yeah, or just even like abbreviated so that it's not visible, because you don't have to obviously show that on the financial lines, the job type name. So if you don't actually want to tell the customer you're charging them more because it was a senior engineer, that's fine. Just on the schedule job type, I'll go back to it, edit. So then the actual name of the job type could be like rate session dash senior engineer. But when you're putting in that financial description, you can get rid of that and just say, don't include the job type name. We don't want to let the customer know we're charging them more for that. Is there any that I've missed? How does the cost look when producing the invoice to the customer? So, like I said, most of this has been selling price rather than cost. Cost has only come through if you're using predefined invoicing items on that rating table. The costs that come through from rates will come from the resources hourly rate. So we'll go back to here and click on myself, click edit. So I don't have an hourly rate set, but say if I set one for £10 just all the time and set that to save. If I go back to my job, so this is actually on my resource in here. Click on it, click view, financial, and recalculate. You see it's brought through my hourly rate here. In fact, it's exactly an hour because that's how long the job is. So it's brought through £10. So that's what's going to show on here. It doesn't actually tell the customer, well, when you're actually creating an invoice as well, it's not going to show the cost price, because invoices, though it'll show it in this section and on the invoice in here, when you actually create that PDF, there's no selling price on it. So you're not going to be telling the customer how much it's costing you. But that's the one way of getting that cost to come through. And it's on the same thing for my travel. So it said that I basically £10 an hour. And because it was only a couple of minutes to drive to that job, it's only 2 miles, so we were a cost price of 1.2. How would you do it if your engineers are not on hourly rates but on a fixed salary? So their cost is not based per hour. If they finish at 4 p.m., still get paid until 5 p.m. So again, that's more like the cost rather than the selling price that's coming through from the rate. If it was a fixed salary, the other thing I think of would be to have basically work it out as an hourly rate and then all these just amend it afterwards. You wouldn't be able to put a fixed price cost in here unless you just only did plan duration and just set the actual like plan duration to be the amount that you want it to come through here. So like, say if I just got charged £100 a day, I'd use plan duration and set it to be whatever is equivalent, but then it will change the selling price. If you're going to do something like that, I would recommend just leaving the hourly rates alone in the resources and then just adding them in manually. So if this engineer is costing you £50, I come through here. But unfortunately, we can't do like a fixed price essentially for cost. Most of the rate section is just for the selling price, really. I think I've gone through all the questions in the chat, and we're coming up to an hour now. If there's any more questions that anybody has, let's go back to our PowerPoint. So any more questions anybody has, you can go to the Help Center. There's a especially useful article on rating tables. If you just go to the Help Center in the Roku tab, type rating tables in, it'll give you basically a lowdown on everything that I've just gone through and how to create them. Alternatively, if you have any questions, as always, Roku are available. You either email roku@bigchange.com or ring 013-457-1000. People are available from 6 till 6 every day, and then there is an out-of-hours one for emergencies, and you'll get a call back within 30 minutes if you do call out of hours. So I hope everyone's enjoyed this session. You've learned something. Yeah, thanks for joining, and I hope you have a good week. All right.